Hello, everyone, and welcome into crushthestreet.com. I have a very special guest on the line. It's been a little while, by the way, since my last interview, so I'm excited to get back on my game here. I'm speaking with Doug Casey from Uruguay. He's in Uruguay right now, so maybe we'll ask him a little bit about that, what he's doing down there. Founder of Casey Research, one of the greatest personalities and authorities in the gold space. So looking forward to a bright and lively conversation. Doug Casey, thanks for coming on Crush the Street with me today.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here with you, Kenneth, although, as you pointed out, it's a good question where here actually is. I'm out on a ranch in Uruguay, a backward little socialist country on the Plate River. It's pleasant, quiet.
So why there, Doug? Why to a backwards socialist country do you find yourself, and not here in the U.S., where maybe it's not as far down the spectrum of that backwards, if you might agree to that statement?
Well, that's a good question. I've been to about 155 countries. I've lived in 10. So there really is no ideal place in the world. I don't really like being in the U.S. much anymore. I'm usually there during the northern summer. Seasons are reversed here, of course. Because in the U.S., it seems to me that we're constantly monitored. There are police everywhere. There are cameras everywhere. It gets under my skin. Things are a little bit different down here. One advantage of being in a backward country. But as you can tell, the internet works reasonably well here, even though I'm out on a farm about 40 minutes from the nearest city.
So one thing that reminds me of is Trump wanting lower interest rates. I mean, he's hinted at negative interest rates. He believes the U.S. deserves to have lower interest rates than basically the rest of the world because he believes we're the best. So we shouldn't have to pay more for things that other countries are paying less for. So why are we paying higher interest rates than Europe or Japan or whatnot? So, well, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, look, I definitely support the Donald over the idiots in the Democratic Party. But that's like saying that I'd support Hitler over Stalin. I mean, it's a Hobson's choice. Donald knows absolutely nothing about economics. He has no philosophical center. He's without knowledge. He doesn't have any core beliefs of any type. And his economic notions are not just wrong, they're actually insane. He's an interventionist. He really believes that the U.S. government should run the economy. He just thinks it should be run in the way he thinks it should be run. It's all just a matter of his deluded opinions. Now, at the same time, we have to look at the alternatives. Now, look, Trump is kind of a cultural conservative. And by that I mean he'd like to see the U.S. return to the values that we had in the 50s and the 60s. Ozzie and Harriet, Father Knows Best, that'd be wonderful. I agree with them. I feel good about that. He doesn't want to see the radical social changes that are occurring in the U.S. I agree. I like that part too. But economically, he's on the way to destroying the country. And the idea that we ought to compete for low interest rates is insane. These are artificial interest rates. Interest rates are a market function. The government should have absolutely nothing to do with them. Instead of trying to manipulate them down to make it possible for the government and other over-indebted entities to pay their interest bills. All it does is discourage people from saving. And if you don't have saving, you don't have capital. And if you don't have capital, you don't have investment, and you can't have prosperity. So this is going to wind up in a catastrophic disaster.
Well put. One of the things that can be seen is the Fed is looking for a way to monetize the debt and deficits. Jeffrey Gundlach points to the Fed wanting interest rates to be below inflation so inflation can combat the longer-term debt concerns. Is there any truth to being able to climb out of this debt mess using inflation?
Well, sure, you can do it that way. You can either default on the debt honestly and overtly, saying, we're not going to pay it. We don't have the money. Sorry, you were stupid for lending us money. That's the honest way to do it. The other way to do it is an even slimier and more destructive way, and that's by inflating it out of existence. Either way, you're stealing from your creditors. Now, I have no sympathy for people that lend to the U.S. government because they're complicit in financing all the destructive things that the U.S. government does. And almost everything it does is destructive. So I have no sympathy for those people at all. The 20-some trillion dollars of debt, it's all going to be defaulted on through inflation as opposed to overtly just telling people we can't pay it. Look, the Federal Reserve shouldn't exist. It should be abolished. And Gundlach, whoever he is, some financial name, he can have an opinion on what he thinks interest rates are going to be, but that opinion is worth nothing. Like my opinion is worth nothing. It's the market that should determine interest rates. How many people want to borrow and how many people want to lend. The Federal Reserve should have nothing to do with it. This is the whole structure of the conversation is idiotic.
Doug, I appreciate what you're saying, and I do value your opinion. And one of the things you were talking about is people who are complicit in lending to the government. And it made me think about the fact that, we all are born into this matrix. It's kind of difficult to completely opt out of the society that we live in. And that's something I believe you've done very well. I mean, you've lived your own life. You're strong to your core beliefs, but I feel like the average person, that'd be very difficult to do. I mean, is there any thoughts on that? The fact that we are born into this matrix, and it's difficult in mass quantities to completely opt out of what is presented in front of us and to play the cards that we're dealt.
Well, you're right about that. Most people are born someplace, accident to birth. You can be born if you're born in the U.S. in the 20th century, or you can be born in the Congo, in which case you're very unlucky. But most people are like plants, potted plants. They find themselves someplace and they stay there for their whole lives. Not a very good survival strategy. My suggestion is that people try to make the world their oyster and control the reality, as opposed to just being a cog in the wheel, a member of the herd, doing what they're told, and paying their taxes, and you actually lose respect for the mass of humanity when you recognize what's going on. They're really no better than cattle in a herd, being directed by their owners. Mm-hmm. And you hope that you'll be treated like a milk cow, but they may treat you like a beef cow. So that's my view on the thing.
So I've heard you talk about the political divide, civil war. Is this country, the U.S., more divided today than it was in other times in recent history? And I'll follow up. Is it Donald Trump's fault? Is he someone that is either, extremely loved or extremely hated that causes polarization, especially for, the radical left, who just seems to be so triggered by everything that he does. So is it Donald Trump's fault that we are seeing such a divide? And how does that look compared to other times in history?
Well, Trump is a symptom. He's not the cause of what's going on here. The divide between the kind of people that tend to live in blue counties and the kind of people that tend to live in red counties, I'd say it's almost unprecedented in U.S. history. It's much more serious than the way things were in the 1850s before the so-called Civil War. That wasn't a civil war, incidentally. That was a war of secession, which is very different from a civil war. In a civil war, two groups are fighting for control of the same government. In a war of secession, one wants to just break away, doesn't want control of the government. This time, we're heading towards an actual civil war, but it may be a war of secession too, because look, people of a different culture, people of different cultures, not only cannot, but they should not live with each other. It's a guarantee of conflict. And you're quite correct that these people, the red people and the blue people, they can't even talk to each other. They're watching different movies. They have different belief systems. I think it's irreconcilable. I think the U.S., this has been the case for many years, I believe this, is going to break up into smaller political entities. And the more it breaks up into, the better. In fact, I'd like to see the whole world break up into about 8 billion little countries. I don't believe in the nation state as a proper way to organize people. The market organizes people. It shouldn't be politics and politicians that organize people.
Doug, you've been involved with media and content creation for a number of years now, and you've seen the evolution of the internet. And I'm just curious, can we attribute some of this divide to technology and the way information is being distributed, as opposed to 20 years ago, 40 years ago, 60 years ago, 100 years ago? Can we attribute anything to the way media plays a role in our society?
Well, that's a good question, because media does make it easier for people that have control of the media to indoctrinate the people that watch and listen to it and believe it. Personally, I don't believe anything that I see on television or read in the paper. But look, technology, including the internet and media, is a friend of the common man. It liberates him. It allows us to get out of the dirt and the clay where we'd be wallowing otherwise. The problem with technology is that the ruling elite always get it first. It's like gunpowder. The ruling elite got it first, but then the average guy got it, and it allowed him to overthrow the ruling elite by a peasant was able to take down an armored knight. It's like the printing press. The ruling elite had it first, but then it broke out, and the average guy, not just the priests, were able to get educated. So I'm a big fan of technology. It's your enemy at first, as the average man, but it turns out to be your friend later. So I guess that's my answer. I don't know if that's direct or clear enough.
No, I appreciate that. And it really does help understand really how things are changing, where we are today. And I agree with you. I think Donald Trump, and this is just my opinion, came about because of, more opportunities for other sources to cover him, because, he wasn't getting the type of coverage maybe he would have deserved by the mainstream media. But because of the internet, the population, I believe, was a little more represented because of this decentralized voice that came because of technology. And I'll let you respond to that.
No, you're absolutely right. Because if Trump hadn't come up, what would have been the choice that voters would have had? It would have been Tweedledee or Tweedledum. You could choose between that other ridiculous Bush from Florida and Bill Clinton's ex-wife. It's like the deep state, which is a real thing, incidentally. It actually exists. It's not a conspiracy or anything like that. We could have a whole conversation about the nature of the deep state. But you get to choose between one wannabe dynasty and another wannabe dynasty. But they're all the same. They all have the same interests. So Trump was an outsider, and he only was able to get in because of the internet and the new media and so forth. But, Trump is an entertainer. I think he's got a high IQ, but it's very dangerous for an entertainer to actually try to move the fate of a country. And it's hard look, every year things get worse in every country around the world, except in the ways of technology and science. There things get better, okay? So the standard of living goes up because of that. But from a point of view of personal freedom, things always get worse. And this includes Trump. Why? Because the legislature thinks it's its job to sit around and make laws every day, tell you what you can do, what you must do, what you must not do, and then they have to raise taxes to pay for that, to enforce their laws. So, of course, you lose freedom every year because of these idiots in the government. And people actually recognize or they believe, they promote governments as being good and necessary. I don't believe that's true. So Trump isn't going to solve any problems. At best, he's going to act as a catalyst for an actual civil war in the U.S., which we may not have because half the country is on psychoactive drugs and the other half is fat and indolent and in their mother's basements playing video games. But it's going to come to a very unhappy ending, and I think in the next few years.
One thing I love about the markets is it gives us an opportunity to put our money where our mouth is, right? So many people have opinions about what is going on. They talk about, what needs to be done with our taxes and this and that. And, these socialists that want to take control and, everyone has an opinion, they think, but the markets give us a real opportunity to say, hey, you know what? I think you're taking the country in a really poor direction. And I believe gold is going to respond really good based on where I believe capital is going to flow. And I tend to believe that. But I'd like to get your thoughts here with the stock market and with precious metals and also the mining stocks, because the mining stocks right now are in that balance. They're in limbo here. And I feel like if we don't get a decent move in gold, we could start to lose some ground with the mining stocks. So maybe we could start off with the overall equities market and just kind of where we're at. I mean, hitting all-time high after all-time high here with the Dow Jones and S&P 500.
Yes, it's wonderful. But we're in a bubble. In fact, it's a super bubble. And the bond market is in a hyper bubble. So as long as the Federal Reserve keeps monetizing the debt and creating more purchasing media, the bubble could get bigger. I mean, I don't know how big a bubble can get. So it's wonderful to live in a fool's paradise. But I don't want any part of it. People say, oh, you're an idiot not having taken advantage of the stock market bubble. Well, when you're in a bubble, if you're an idiot if you sell too soon, but then again, you're a bigger idiot if you sell after the bubble bursts. So I don't want any part of either stocks or bonds. Now, when it comes to gold, it's not a giveaway levels anymore, the way it was the last time was in the early 2000s. But it's reasonable value. And it's the only financial asset that's not simultaneously somebody else's liability. So yeah, I continue buying gold. As far as the mining stocks, they're totally different. They're a speculation. They're not investments. Most of them are burning matches. Mining is the worst industry in the world. There's probably worse industries, but it's one of the very worst. It's a dinosaur industry, but it's a very necessary industry. And right now, these mining stocks are really in the toilet. I mean, they're in real terms about as cheap as they've ever been. So I'm speculating in them too, because when they run, and I think they will, they go 10 to 1 as a group. And some individual stocks go 100 to 1. Sometimes they'll go 1,000 to 1, as unbelievable as that sounds. Not over the course of a lifetime, over the course of a couple of years. So I guess that's the answer in a nutshell.
Yeah, no, it will be an exciting run. And unfortunately, most people aren't going to experience those gains because what happened over the last so many years since 2011 is people have really had a bad experience with mining stocks. So I think as soon as we see a little bit of upwards moves in the mining sector, I don't think people are going to have the conviction to hold on for very long and to actually see 10x returns, 100x returns, and much less even 1,000 times their money.
Oh, you're right. The public is completely out of mining stocks. I mean, look, when I talk to so-called sensible financial people and I say that I specialize in mining stocks, they think I'm an idiot. And there's some truth to that. As I said, mining is the worst industry in the world.
Doug, I want to thank you for coming on my...
I think mining stocks are a superb speculation, but you got to remember that about 95% of them are complete garbage. They're either promotions, they're underfunded, their management are hustlers. So it's not an easy place to make money. But now's the time to get into them. That said.
Yes, sir. Doug Casey, everyone, of Casey Research, founder of Casey Research. Doug, if you have any closing thoughts on some of the things that we talked about, please share them now. But if people want to learn more about you, the things that you're doing, where is the best place for people to go and to learn about the things that you're doing?
Well, they can go to caseyresearch.com, go to the website. I do an interview there every Friday. Better yet, they can go to internationalman.com. I do another different interview there, typically every Wednesday or Thursday. So, and they should opt into internationalman.com. And also, I'd like to recommend that people buy one of my new novels, because I'm writing novels as opposed to nonfiction for a lot of different reasons. There's a lot of things you can say in the form of fiction you dare not say in the form of nonfiction. So get a hold of Speculator and Drug Lord, which are the first two in a series of 7 novels. They're really quite good, if I do say so myself. In March, the third one, Assassin, following our hero through increasingly politically incorrect occupations, will be out. So if you want to follow me, do all of those things. The books are also available through internationalman.com and through the website highgroundbooks.com. So there you have it.
Well, thanks, Doug. You're real inspiration. You're living your dream, and you're staying active. You're going hard. So congratulations to you. And again, thanks so much for coming on Crush the Street with me today.
Well, talk to you in a few months or whatever.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.